Hello and welcome to the first ever edition of Tournament Poker Project. My name's John.
And I'm Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players. And this is our journey to get good enough to play in the World Series of Poker. At the moment, my live bankroll is 0. And my online bankroll is just what I put in there the other month at about £120 or $160 as it displays. And we need to get kind of up to around the £20,000 mark each to say that we've made enough money. We must be skilled enough to now go and play the World Series of Poker. Where are you at with your bankroll, Tain?
I've got about £300, 100 of which roughly is online, 200 of which is live.
Good. Well, you're ahead of me.
Slightly there. Well, that's just the good timing of this pod.
Yeah, I feel like you've like, right, let's, I've won a little bit. Let's record a pod. Anyway, so look, this is basically going to be me and Tain doing what we love best, and that's talking about poker hands. The game is your usual no limit hold'em. And we'll just be going through talking about the hand, talking about our ideas, what we think at each point, decisions that we're making and why we're making them, and anything and everything that comes up. If you are listening in, please know that we're not professionals. This is just kind of our take on the hand and where we're up to in our learning. So if you have got any of your own thoughts on a hand or any comments you want to leave at all, please do post a message in the chat. So without further ado, let's jump straight into a hand. What you got for us, Tain?
So this is very short hands, but there's quite a bit going on. In these hands, the hero is sitting there with 18,000, and they are in mid position.
How many players in the hand at the moment?
So there is 9-handed.
Okay.
The blinds are 400 and 800. We've only just joined the table, so we've got no good information on anyone, unfortunately. Stacks are all roughly the same as ours, except one on the big blind who's a bit deeper. And
our stack, did you say about 18,000?
18,000. And okay. We're looking down mid position, and we've got a pair of ladies, got 2 queens.
2 queens.
Okay. The action.
We're in mid position, yeah.
In mid position, it's a regular £50 entry tournament, rebuy tournament, 400, 800, which means it's fairly early. It's live, so you'd expect other players to be of a decent enough standard that they're willing to travel and pay £50 to play, but not great that they're not playing the big bucks or heavily invested in the cash tables. And that's it. That's really kind of the information we've got. We sit down, look down at queens. Early position raises to 2,200.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let's think then. So if we're looking at M value, is there an ante?
No.
So the M value is the big blind plus the small blind, so 1,200. So okay, and so 12,000 is the kind of top of the orange zone, bottom of the yellow zone, and then he's open to 22. So what's that? Just under 3 times the big blind.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. What are you thinking then, Tain? What are we doing with the ladies?
It's definitely a free bet in this position easily. This is where we need to look at the limited stack that we have. 18k is, by the time you've re-raised that to something tangible, where we're looking 6 to 8 times the big blind, you're already up to 6,000, 7,000. Mm-hmm. You're only sitting around with another 1 street's worth of value at that point. Queens are generally good, but you're only in mid position, and this is an early position raise. So you've got to assume the early position's strong. Yeah. Difficult to say if they're strong, or they're just early tournament playing wild rebuy strong, which could mean up to 30% of their holdings. But we've got the whole table to back behind us, which is quite considerable. What's that? Another 6 players.
So if we do 3 bets to like 6,000, and then we've only got 12,000 left behind, and then he shoves all in, like it folds all the way back round to the original razor, and he shoves all in. Are we folding the queens? I mean, that's, you know, 4 betting. That's showing big strength. Under the gun raise is open is going to be pretty strong anyway. Do we just go for it, or can we get away from it?
The queer, it's with that thinking where I'm not sure if there's too much of a move beyond either a massive free bet, so 10k, where you're essentially saying to them, I'm putting 10k in, but I might as well be all in this situation. But you're also potentially saying, if I get called, my hand's strong enough to hold. I don't want to force everyone out of this hand immediately. I don't know. People could read it that way. They might not. They might read it as the hand's weak enough that you don't want to risk all of it.
I mean, if we raise and we 3-bet to like 6,000, right, and then it folds round and the original raiser then calls, there's going to be something like 13,000 in the pot, 13.2 or something, right? 13.2 in the pot, and we'll have 12 behind, so we'll have a really low SPR. We'll basically be push folding. Then if an ace or a king hit the flop, we're going to be in a bit of a world of pain here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going to feel totally committed. I mean, if an ace and a king hit the flop, you just have to be out of there. And then an ace or a king, you might say it's 50-50. I'm starting to feel like maybe considering that kind of pushes us into maybe our 3-bet pre-flop should just be all in. Like, just get it done. Like, take the hard decision out of it on the flop. And if he's got it and he's already got you beat, then he's already got you beat. If you're going to be seeing a flop and then basically I'm in a whole world of pain if there's an ace or a king on the board, you know, and then potentially fold that. I mean, I don't know if that's a good move or not. Should you be doing that with a pair of queens? That seems really tough.
But there's nothing that even suggests that you're getting caught. Like, you're basically saying any ace or any king, I'm going to sacrifice my hands no matter what they've got. And the thing is, as much as you've just sat down at the table and we can't really say if if these players are decent or not, that's really exploitable. If anytime you're sitting there with queens or jacks, for instance, you're folding to absolutely any ace or king. I'd be raising an ace or king with absolute air in that position, just in the hope that you are playing with that kind of hand.
Yeah.
But then that's the benefits of playing the short stacks not the short stacks, but the shorter stacks when you've got a bigger stack. That's why you bully people in them positions, because they can't see their queens through to the end if an ace flops down. Yeah.
And there's not an argument for just calling this pre-flop. You've got people left to act, but
No.
if you call the open, you might get someone do a bit of squeeze play, and then I don't know. It's very tricky, isn't it? Because sometimes people will squeeze with a slightly wider range, and actually you end up, if you get that person involved in the original razor fold, you might even end up against a slightly weaker hand in some situations. Not that that's a way to play it, I suppose. Like trying to get the person with the best hand out of the hand by inducing a squeeze play later on. That's probably not really a thing. I don't know. It just feels like one of those things. Early position ways. If this had been an open from mid position and we were in late position with queens, easy peasy. I'd be raising to 6 and then happy to go all in pre-flop, happy to go all in on the flop with pretty much any flop. It'd have been a very different story. An early, is it an under the gun race? Did you say under the gun open?
Yeah.
Yeah, with 9 players at the table, it's going to be a tight range, right? $50 tournament, $50 entry.
Rebuy though.
Rebuy as well. I mean, I don't play many of those. I don't play many of those. Online, did you say, or live? Live. Okay, that does change things a little bit.
So the standard is you'd expect at $50, especially online, $50 online, rebuy or not, you'd expect a real good quality of player.
But 50 quid at live is, you know, you practically get that down the pub some games.
Yeah, we play in a midweek game where the £20 rebuy on a Wednesday is exactly the same crowd as the £60 rebuy at the weekend. It's the same players. It's just
And there's people, people down there drinking beer and having a laugh, and it's a great game, just the way poker should be. But a £50 game there is very different type of player to that you get online, isn't it?
I mean, I think a call would be an awful move at this point.
Yeah, what's your worries with a call?
You're getting into the position where everyone behind you, because it is so early, everyone behind you is starting to get better and better odds, because it's only 2.5, just under 3 times the big blind. It's not huge. So your call, and then all you need is one other call, and suddenly every suited connector, every raggy ace is calling behind you because it's getting better and better and better, and people want to take a punt, especially for a rebuy where they think, well, if I hit this good, I've tripled up, for instance. So I think there's a call just doesn't do anything for you. It's why would you call when you've got the option to raise and fill the field?
We've got a big pair. We've got a made hand. We want this pot heads up post flop. Yeah. We don't want to be going multi-way with this. So, all right. Well, I think we're in agreement. We raise it up then, right?
Yeah, we going up all the way. I mean, I think where we're split, and this isn't between the two of us, just as in our thinking, is that there is a real good shout to go all in at this point. But raise to about 6k, I think that feels right. So turns out the hero did raise to 6k.
Okay.
That was the bet. I think that is on the very light side of a free bet, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Well, three times the total raise, right? So he's raised up to 2,200. You might say that 6,600 is a kind of standard 3-bet size there, right?
Well, if you're going to 3-bet, according to like the Rec Poker podcast, just giving them a little heads up, you should play the bet that was right for your hand, not react to the other player. Okay. So if you were always going to 3-bet, if you said to yourself, if they bet me, I'm going to 3-bet them. If you're only 3-betting 3 times their raise, you're allowing their small bet or their over bet to define what you're looking to do. Whereas if you'd already determined I've got 18k in my stack, whatever they bet, I'm going to 3-bet it 8 times the big blind or 10 times. But let's say we said 10 times just for the math. So I'm going to raise it to about £8,000, knowing full well that I'm all in. No matter what action happens behind, no matter if it goes to the flop, I'm all in, pretty much blind to that flop.
Yeah,
that's your plan for the hand. That's what you want to see through. Don't let the other person influence that, because that then sets you back. If they bet tiny, say they only bet up to 1,600 and then you only bet to 5,000, you've just invited other people to call that, or you've not defined it enough that they're definitely going to call you anyway. So you're now fighting the flop because they're actually getting the odds to call you because your free bet was too small, because their original raise was too small. But 6k is not bad.
What stack size would, like keeping the pre-flop action similar, so 2,200 raise open 2,200 open from early position, what stack size would we have where we would go all in instead of a 6k bet? Alexa, stop. Bad timing. Bad timing. So yeah, what stack size would we have there? So we're saying that 18k, we can 3-bet 6k without thinking, no, we just need to go all in. What if our stack size was 12k? That feels to me like around the time where you'd say, you know what, I need to 3-bet to around 6k. I've got 12k left. I'm just going to put the whole lot in.
Yeah, 100%.
About there, about 12k.
Yes. And then if say we were deeper, even as little as up to 24k deeper, I would say that 3-bet should be stronger. I could be totally wrong how I do this, but the earlier I am in position, I kind of add on an extra big blind the closer and closer, and then add another big blind on because it's a free bet. So if I was just gonna, well, no, it's always a free bet, but if it's like a 4-bet, for instance, the multiplier goes up again. But it's generally the earlier I am in position, or the more people behind, or the stronger the people behind, the bigger the free bet will be. So yeah, anything I could be free betting up to 8,000 if I think I'm too early here. There's a lot of people behind me, but I am pretty deep.
Sure. Okay then. All right then. So what happens next? So with free bet to 6k, the pot's now sitting at approximately 9k ish, 9.5.
Yeah, 9,004.
9.4. So what happened? Do we get any callers after that? Any raises?
Fold to the big blind. They push you all in.
How much they got?
They've got like 25, 30k. They've got
sugar.
They've got both the raise and the early position and you covered. So now it becomes multi-way with action to decide on.
What's the stack size of the original opener in early position?
Around 20k.
So this big blind knows that if he gets callers, he's going to be his stack's destroyed. He's down to sort of 5k ish, maybe around. Yes. So he's going to have 5k. Okay, so he's not doing it for fun. He's 4-betting you. He's seen an early position raise open, an early position open, a mid position 3-bet. I mean, this to me is screaming that he is super strong. I'm thinking aces or kings here for the big blind.
Sure. Is it ever a ball? So let's assume early position raise folds. We were in a position where we kind of assumed we could be down all in at this point regardless.
Does the early position fold? What does he do?
They do fold.
Fold, so it's all on us.
Yeah.
Tough spot. We just put in a third of our stack. We didn't expect this from anyone behind. We thought it was going to be, at worst, a tough decision with the early position opener, right? Which wouldn't have been that tough. We'd have probably called it. Now we've got this super strong. So just for our listeners, the reason this is super strong is because the big blind has just watched someone from early position who would typically have quite a tight, high cards or decent pairs range open, and then someone in relatively early position as well, mid position, so not late position, 3-bet to a third of his stack. This guy must be thinking one of these guys has got something pretty strong here. Has then gone all in. All in. He must be knowing he's getting a caller. He must be sitting there staring at very strong cards.
Yeah, I think that we have to assume that they've either got cojones the size of watermelons and they know they can represent that kind of strength, which is an excellent play. And given a rebuy, still within the rebuy period, I've seen people go that wild because it can get false. But at the same time, the right play, we have to assume it's the right play, and the right play is that you're only doing that with a tiny percent of your hands.
Is it possible the big blind here with this all-in shove has got jacks or tens? If you were sitting there on a pair of jacks and you saw that actually in front of you, you thought, I can't get away from my jacks, but there's no point in calling. I'm just going to shove and see if I can get these two to fold. Almost turning his jacks into a bit of a bluff, like a semi-bluff that might get a call from an ace king, ace queen.
I'd say that there's a small possibility. For me, the context would always be that would be either a mistake, or that player has enough information to know that it's a high quality move because it will get much better hands to fold. And I can't, because the only information I've got is that the heroes just sat down at the table. 18k is roughly average at this point. I think the information they've got isn't necessarily that this is a great player or this is someone who's going to read that level of play to think he's only ever doing that on a bluff. I think it's always could be bluffing as a small percentage of his balancing range, but the truth is the rest of his range is absolutely monster. It's very polarized almost. That
Yeah, sure.
it's difficult. Is it only ever pairs?
How? Yeah, well, exactly. It could be ace king, couldn't it? It could be a flip. In which case, you've got the odds to call. You're slightly ahead with a pair of queens against ace king, and so basically any amount you put in the pot is always going to be correct. What's the equity saying? If we kind of know we might be behind, we could look at equity here. Or what about if we tried to guess or estimate what percentage of the time he has got aces and kings versus ace king, ace queen? Or, I mean, how many hands that we are currently either slightly ahead of or are crushing, like tens and jacks? How many of those are there versus exact hands like pair of aces and a pair of kings? There's a lot more combos of hands he would do it with, right? There's a lot more combos. When we add this up, you've got hands that we beat, even if it's just about all the combos of ace king, all the combos of ace queen. Although it's hard to believe he'd do it with ace queen, but maybe he would. Ace king, ace queen, and then the pairs of tens and pairs of jacks.
You're doing this with. I'm going to include the pair of queens just in case, by fluke or crook, you've both got queens. Is this just suited? Connect ace king, ace queen.
I think the ace king offsuit he might do it with as well. Ace queen, you'd expect it to be suited if he'd do it at all.
So at the moment with that range, pocket pairs down to tens, ace king suited, and ace king off. They've got 50 combos. Quite a lot, actually, considering how narrow that range might be. Taking out the bottom of the range, actually, it's a few less than 50. Sorry, because I've not input that two of the queens have already gone. If you reduced it down to the absolute top of the range, aces, kings, and ace king, suited and unsuited, 28 combos.
And that's including pairs of aces and pairs of kings, though.
Yeah, and then take out ace king off. So just aces, just kings, just ace king suited, 16 pre-flop hands, 1.2%.
But what I was hoping we could do is look at how many combos there are of all the hands he'd do it with, minus pairs of aces and pairs of kings. So because he's crushing us with pairs of aces and pairs of kings, but it feels like there's going to be more combos of hands he would do that with that aren't aces and kings, like pair of aces, pair of kings. See what I'm saying? So is it easy to find how many hands are ace king, ace queen, basically ace king and ace queen, and then pairs of tens and pairs of jacks?
Yep, that is 31 combos.
31 combos. And then how many? Oh, sorry, go on.
I've not included ace queen off. Just ace queen suited.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. So what did you say? 21, 28?
31 combos.
31 combos versus how many combos of pairs of aces and pairs of kings are there?
What we should be able to put 12 in it. 12, yeah, 12.
12. So actually, we've got to call this, surely.
Yeah. One thing I'd like us to quickly go through is ask questions of the actual big blind raiser, where given the stacks, from my understanding, the early positions got a stack similar to ours. I think it was around 20,000. I haven't got an exact note, but it was, they, as far as I understand, they were pushed all in if they'd afford. They've got two people ahead of them of early position raise with a average stack. Then a mid position free bet to the point that they could get away from their hands, but they're getting crippled at that point. What would that leave us with? 12,000 with 12,000. Yeah, you're leaving yourself very, very low after that raise if you're not calling a bet. And to be fair, if you're not going to call a bet with queens in that position,
I've lost
should you
you
be
there.
getting involved?
Sorry, mate. I've just lost you there. Say that again. So what was you stating there?
So the big blind who is pushing everyone all in, if he's expecting both of you to call, is that a good move with the range that we're putting him on? Is a better move just a call and then see what happens? Because if you've got, let's just say you've got aces and kings, you know that person's got queens.
It feels like to me, yes, it feels like he could do that with aces, kings, queens. If he's got the other two queens, jacks, tens, ace, king, suited, unsuited, and then ace, queen off, ace, queen suited only. That seems to me that only hands he would possibly do that with, but he wouldn't be able to fold. Like that's you've watched an early position open, a mid position 3-bet. If you've got ace king, you can't fold it. If you've got ace queen suited, you'd be a saint to fold it. Pair of tens, you might be able to fold if you're particularly disciplined. I mean, the M value is 1,200. He's got 25, 30,000 chips in his stack, so he's well in the green zone. He's got an M of over 20. He doesn't need to be getting involved. I don't think anything less than ace queen suited is in there.
So if the big blind is doing a shove with just aces, kings, queens, ace king off, ace king suited, ace king suited, and ace queen suited, they've only got 40 basically 41% equity.
Okay, so we're favourite to win, right?
Well, the problem here is that I'm just trying to work out if even with their ace that tighter range against two people who are guaranteed to call, let's just assume we're guaranteed to call. It's not the right assumption, but to make that kind of bet from the action in front of you, it's going to happen at least a bit of the time. Is 40% equity enough? I suppose because you're not tripling up because the effective stack's a lot lower than your stack. Is the risk rewards? It probably does balance, but it becomes a lot higher variance than it seems. Even if you're only playing aces and kings, aces, kings, ace king suited. If we get rid of even the ace queen and the ace king off, it's still only 40. Yeah, you're up to 53% equity, which is probably well in against 3 opponents.
Yeah, I think on its own it's borderline, but is he guaranteed to get 2 callers? He might be thinking, I can get him off this. He might, who knows?
I think they're being very generous if they think both will fold.
Yeah, that's pretty gutsy if he's playing for the fold, but he might be factoring in some fold equity, is what I'm thinking. So he might have an equity that's exactly 43% or whatever it is, but he might factor in a little bit of fold equity as well, which kind of bumps it up a little bit. And either way, you said he's got 25,000 odd, and we've got 18,000. The early position's got about 20,000, so he might not be quite tripling up, but he's still well over doubling up if he gets 2 callers anyway. This feels about right. It feels marginal, but to me, this feels like this is a call. Let's get those chips in.
And it's not right. So even if you're sitting there with kings or ace king suited, the shove all in is the right move from the big blinds, not simply either a call or a 4-bet. So there is still 4-bet potential up to say 12k, which basically puts players in, but actually is only jeopardising half your stack for probably the same information. I think that the under the gun raiser is pushing at that point, regardless if they are part of his hand. And similarly, the hero is going to shove regardless if they've got the right hand to do it. And if either of them were doing that light, they're both going to fold.
I think though, if he's putting in 12k as a 4-bet and he's got like 25 odd, he's practically putting in half his stack. And I'm sure I've heard a little rule of thumb that if you're betting half your stack, you're pushing. You may as well push all in.
It's more from the likelihood of being against two opponents, because when you're heads up, or you're likely to be heads up, you can kind of easily calculate your equity. You can work out the strength of your hands based on the strength of their range and take it from there. Whereas against two opponents where they both feasibly could be playing the very strongest hands anyway. I mean, under the gun raise, that could be the super tight players that would only ever raise, like me, only ever raise under the gun with absolute monsters. You know what I mean? The very best 5% of hands. And then the free better might be the same. They're only free betting in this position with monsters. I mean, they've done it with queens, but that is top 3% of hands, top 4% of hands. Is that, let's just throw the rest of it. As great as kings are, it's against two opponents, it becomes a lot less good. It becomes harder to win. It becomes, the variance goes up, that even when you are winning enough of the time, if you leave the tournament or have to rebuy, is that the spot to get all your chips risk stat against two possibly likely opponents? That's kind of where I'm at. And I'm not saying it was a wrong move. I think
I see what you're saying there, but it's tricky, right? So if you've got kings in the big blind, you've got this action in front of you, you're not folding them. No way you're folding your kings. So you're, as a minimum, you're calling that 3-bet, knowing that there's the early position opener to act after you that could put you all in there and then you know you're going to have to call anyway. When that flop comes down, you know you're going to have at least one opponent. You've called the middle position 3-better. When that flop comes down, are there any flops you're folding? If you get pushed all in with a pair of kings, that big blind probably knows he's all in anyway. A little bit like we do with our queens, but even more so, I would say.
Yeah. But then, if the big blind feels they're going to be getting the equity against two players, isn't the fold equity the opposite? It's unvaluable. You actually want two callers in that position, especially two callers. Like, is it better to get more chips in? So as long as you miss an ace and the board's not absolutely horrific, is that more likely to? So, for instance, I think you're right that the under the guns, there's a good chance they're folding here. That could have been a speculative move. It wasn't the biggest of raises. It didn't really stamp their authority on it. So that could be a fold. Could you have got them along for the rides and then got an extra bet out of them, and also commit the heroes to going all in? Because let's be clear, the heroes covering almost everything but the absolute worst boards. So is it have gained extra bets, or is it missing value by trying to get everything done pre-flop so there's no post-flop consideration? Is it a scared bet so that if they are playing something like ace king or pair of kings, queens, maybe even jacks, they're scared of seeing a flop?
Could be. See, I would like doing an all-in there with ace king suited, because I don't really want to see a flop. Not really, not with the action in front of me. But it's too, you can't not play the hand. I would probably push all in with ace king suited on the big blind there, and just hope they go away. And if they don't, you know, I've got a good chance of hitting and making the hand anyway. It's a tough one. I can see why you chose this to talk about, because I mean, if it had more action on the turn on the river, we'd be talking for hours. So this was a good one to get our teeth into. That's relatively snappy.
Yeah, cool. Should we move? Do you want to move on to the action? Get into the.
Yes, please. Yeah, what happened?
So this is it. So the early position fold, and the hero calls.
So we get to see.
We do, and the villain sitting there in the big blind had kings.
And did the flop come queen, ace?
It came. I didn't. There's not a note, but it's a. They went out. The queens did not improve.
Okay. Well, look. I mean, I'm pleased. We certainly had kings in his range.
We did.
We knew that could well be a hand he's doing that with, so we did get that right. Results orientated, we would be saying no, we should have folded, but actually I think our maths was good there. The hands that we put him on that he could have done that with meant that there was enough hands that we beat, that we lost to make the call profitable in the long run. And right, it's all about playing as if this same situation was played over an infinite number of hands, with all of the hands in his range that we put him on over and over again. How many times on average would we win versus lose? Well, we would win, and then we would make profit. That's the theory, right?
It is. I mean, just to give you a little background on this is a friend of mine called John Bon.
What,
who played this at Asper's Casino, yeah.
What? When did you see this?
Quite a long time ago. You posted it into our WhatsApp group.
Wow.
And the reason why I thought this was great.
I remember this hand. Now you've said that. I remember this hand. I was so annoyed because I kind of knew it. I've got information I could have given you on this. So he was sitting there. He was sitting there talking to me and really, really trying to work out if I had a pair of aces, right? Yeah. And if I'd have thought about it properly, I could have thought, well, if he's only scared of pocket aces, then he's got pocket kings, right? But I made the call anyway, and probably rightly so. No matter what the guy's saying to me, I can't really let that affect my decision too much. It should be mostly based on maths in this situation. So, you tricked me, man. I didn't realise. Yeah, I do remember that hand.
Yeah, I plugged a lot of gaps. So there are times where I completely guessed at what early position had as a stack size and what the big blind had as a stack. I could have been totally wrong about it. Right. And I was like, okay, I've just got to make this up.
You know what? That sounded about right. I've got to say, that sounded about right.
What was good fun is that you did exactly the same action.
Yeah, good on me. I mean, I was annoyed with myself at the time, but I shouldn't have been. It was the right thing to do, right?
Yeah. Do you know what your question was? The main question you were asking wasn't so much, was I right to call? You kind of asked, were they right to be pushing with kings in that position as well? Which is why I thought is a good thing. As much as yes, I think they were fairly good. It's not clear cut. There's a lot for them to be thinking about. There's a lot of situations like, are they getting the right equity? Do they want to be doing this in a tournament? Is there value they're throwing away by pushing out players with a hand as strong as kings? Especially when you've got them covered, you know what I mean? Let them get their chips in, but don't force them out the hand thinking, well, I've won their initial bet. You've got kings. Okay, if against two opponents, your equity goes down, but you're still 50% for the hand. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's amazing. Go with it. Get all their chips, and the times you lose, you lose. But yeah, that was a great hand. I really enjoyed our short, but the stuff that we could go through. I mean, I actually did a full analysis trying to work out the likelihood of the small blind calling. So I put the small blind on calling 25% of the time with their range, and then you calling 69. Oh, right. So you're calling 75% of the time, I believe. And it worked out that the villain was getting a call 69% of the time. And out of that, they were winning with their kings 59% of the time. But I still couldn't work out exactly where their break-even point was. I needed to do a bit more maths.
That's gone right over my head, but it sounded very, very clever. All right, Tain. Well, I think that maybe wraps it up for this first one. What do you think? Any more final comments?
No, it's all good. We'll revisit some of these hands much later on and see if our thinking has changed. I'm going to periodically test you on this hand when you've forgotten about it again, just to see if your action ever is different.
And I definitely will forget. I've got a memory like an absolute sieve. So, all right. Well, look, thanks so much, Tain. Always a pleasure. And thanks so much if you're listening in. Like I say, leave a message. And we hope to see you again next podcast.
Sure.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.